This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And make sure to order Jamie Glazov's new critically acclaimed jihadist psychopath, how he is charming, seducing, and devouring us. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Tonight, my escape from slavery in Sudan. With us this evening, Francis Bach, an escaped slave and now an abolitionist. Francis, what an honor to have you on the Glazov Gang.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Jimmy, for having me.
And it truly is an honor for me, Francis. I've known about you for a long time, read about you for a long time, and just read your memoir, Escape from Slavery, which came out in 2003 and received wide critical acclaim. Why don't we just begin with your story and how it all began? You're from South Sudan, raised in a Christian family, raised in the Catholic Church, and then something horrific happened in 1986. Why don't we begin, Francis?
Thank you very much for having me on today's show. You have captured the caption of the show rightfully, because that's the title of my book, Escape from Slavery, the true story of my 10 years in captivity and my journey to freedom in America. My story begins long in 1986. I was a little boy, having no idea about America, having no idea even the next village to my village, having no idea about anything, including slavery. These words never heard in my village, I believe, but there was something going on because of the world that I was living in at the time was a complete and isolated place where there's no any development in terms of anything. My parents, my father, Bulbuk, was a farmer, a businessman, someone who herded a lot of cattle. In today's modern life, it could be a millionaire, it could be somebody with money. That was his job. My mother also came from the same family and from the same background. They weren't happy people in the village. In the evening of May 15, 1986, as we usually gather underneath our mango tree in my village called Gorian in northern Bahr-Ghazali states, one of the states now with the Republic of South Sudan, but at that time was one of the city or province of Sudan at the time. I remember my mother came to me and called me out with my African name, Piol, P-I-O-L. She said, Piol, come to me. And I kind of a little bit hesitated because I knew she was calling me to go do something. While the game was really intensified because I was playing with my friends from the village who come and join me underneath the tree, making a mud. We were actually shaving cows out of mud or clay. A game that determined the manhood. When you were 10 or 15 years old, you might earn your own cattle because cattle are the wealth for us, like money. And I kind of looked at my mother and I said, no. And she said, did you say no or yes? And I walked towards her immediately and I said, I mean, yes. She told me politely, I want you to go to local market to sell peanuts and eggs. And then the next thing I saw was a girl who was our neighbor. Her name is Nubol. She's about 16 years old. This girl was to be our leader, leading us to the local market that take a walk of 15 miles. We left my village My two siblings came and hugged me. Some of my friends did. My mother hugged me also, and I waved to them as I was following the 16 years old to lead her to local market and holding the small basket with the eggs and peanuts. I must tell you, that was the last day. That was the last day I ever saw my mother again. That was the last day I never saw my father and my two sisters and perhaps many of my friends that we used to play. We walked and we went to that local market called Nyamlel. In Nyamlel, we were sitting underneath the big tree because when I say market, it is unlike in the West or in the United States where you have a big complex, a compound where you have many shops and malls. That was opposite. People gather underneath a big tree, and underneath that tree is where you sell and you also buy. And while we were sitting, I heard adults talking about the smoke, and they all point towards my village. As a 7 years old, I wasn't paying attention, nor did I even bother to listen critically what was being discussed. In that particular moment, I saw some people began packing and leaving the market, and I thought maybe the day is coming to an end because they're done with business. But there was a fear of which the Arab raider, Arab Bagara, or Arab militia, now in the case of Darfur, they started in 2003, to date, called Janjaweed, or nomads, Arab who came on horseback and camels, whom the Sudanese government provide them everything they need, particularly weapons, and tell them to go to southern Sudan at the time, to raid villages with impunity, killing the men, particularly the physical and older men, taking the women and children and abandoning the elderly women that cannot walk or considered useless in their term because they will be productive when they take them to the place of enslavement. These people raided and they burned my village to the ground. My mother, my father, and two sisters were actually burned alive along with many people in the village. And they actually marched into the same marketplace where I were. This is where I witnessed, and I always say for people to just to know the movie that I was in, I related to the Hotel Rwanda movie about the genocide in Rwanda in 1994, where you see children, teachers, and others being actually packed in one room and set it on fire. That's how I witnessed in the marketplace in Nyamlel, seeing almost everybody around me being killed, men being seized their throat or being actually cut with the swords, seeing women and children running for their lives, seeking for exit, but there was no exit. I was there wondering, what is going on here? I was too seeking for exits, but there was no exit. I look left, I look right, and all I see the blood running like water in a small river. I heard people shouting for help, and I was too, until I see this man walking towards me with his big horse. He got off. He told me to sit down. He was speaking in Arabic. I didn't understand Arabic that time. He dragged me, and I see many young men being and women, including girls, being dragged and put separately in the group. I was seated in the group quietly, and somebody getting out with a gun pointed on our heads. And they continues destroying the market, killing people, and rounding up what they want to take with them, our livestock. Afterward, we were all taken to the north of Sudan. On our way, I witnessed a 12-year-old girl crying. She was crying because she witnessed her mother being shot on the head. And she was saying, why they killed my mother? And why are you taking us? Where are you taking us to? this girl couldn't stop crying, and they were actually taking her out of the group and shot on the head. It was a demonstration to many of us to be quiet and to just go with them. Her sister also continued to cry until she was also hurt. They cut up one of her actually arms. It was another sign for us to be, and I learned from that moment that this is a completely different situation where I had to be quiet. Until when we were divided up to these militiamen who raided the village and killed my parents and killed everybody in the marketplace, I ended up being given to a gentleman called Jimma Abdullah, who himself participated in the raid. Until we arrived to his farm, he called the whole family to meet me. And I remember when everybody came to me, his children and his wife, her name Hawa, I thought they were coming to say good things or do good things, in particular kid to come to play with me. But the next thing I saw, I heard everyone saying, Abid. And I didn't even know what Abid means, but Abid means slave. It also means black. It's pretty much Arabic for the N-word here. And I seen kid coming and peeing on me. And that's how my life became for the next rest of the 10 years. I was treated as less than animal. I was dehumanized. I was only taught to say yes, and being the first one to walk off in the morning and the last one to go to bed.
Francis, this is very heart-wrenching, and my heart is with you, and our thoughts and prayers are with you and with everybody that has suffered and is suffering in this way, and to your family and your loved ones. It's hard to find words. So there's so many different ways we can go here right now. Let's just go in this direction for a minute before we begin chapter 2 of your journey. Francis, when I study slavery in Africa, you know, we know that it's happening in Libya, Mauritania, Sudan, Nigeria, Algeria today. You know, this is a taboo subject. A lot of people watching this program right now probably never even heard of this. We will never see this on CNN. We will never see this on MSNBC. And so this is not known about. And something that what you're referring to right now, there's a particular detail that even when I've watched some of your interviews and the writing about your story, they still don't mention it. They talk about, oh, there were these slave raiders, and then there was, you know, Francis Bach was taken into slavery. But they miss out something, and I want to talk about it. These are Muslim Arabs that took you as a slave, and they called you Abid because you are black, dark African. And I'm saying dark African in the sense that they are more light-skinned because they're Arab. Correct me if I'm wrong. So there is, number one, an Arab racism. And let us not look over this detail that these are Muslims. Let us not look over the detail that it is not the Dinkas, which I think is your tribe, if that's the correct way of saying it. But let's say the Christian blacks, the Dinkas, that was your tribe. They're not taking slaves. They're not taking the Muslim Arabs as slaves. And for many reasons. One of them is because it's not in the New Testament. But in the Quran, when we have references to captives of the right hand, we have verses, you know, chapters 4, verse 3, chapter 4, verse 24, chapter 23, verses 1 to 6, chapter 33, verse 50, chapter 70, verse 30. There's a sanctioning of slavery in the Quran, and these slave traders do what they did what they did, because Islam gives them that inspiration and sanctioning to do so, and then we blend it in with an Arab racism towards African black people. Have I said anything incorrect?
You absolutely said it all. This is how I felt. I live in America now, and I'm a free man, but I still ask a lot of questions. What is good is my freedom if many of my people are still held in bondage and in slavery in the hand of these people who perceive themselves to be better than me and than my people. The reason I believe that nobody talk about the people who are enslaving us today, you know, as we speak, South Sudan is an independent country from the country of Sudan where we were enslaved. But after the independence of South Sudan, and even when the peace was signed in 2005, that actually brought to an end to Africa's longest civil war that claimed the life of over 2 million of my people in southern Sudan at the time and displacing 4.5 millions. There was nothing mentioned about those who were actually taken to slavery, whether or not they will be released to go back to their family and reunite. These people remained as a gift and as the property of the northern Sudanese Arab Muslims. Something that angered me until today, because I believe I have family there. I believe I have friends there, like Barjok, and Nubol that I mentioned that went to the marketplace with me, and many others, children that I know and I never met, but they are Southern Sudanese. And from across all the South Sudan, it wasn't only in my village or in my area of northern Bahr Ghazal at the time. So I think there's a story that everybody is afraid to talk. And today I have a courage to say there's only one man that I would wanted to talk about that person's, because I believe it's only him that would be able to convince Americans, African Americans, and everyone that respect him in this country. And that man, none other than Mr. Minister Luis Farrakhan. I know he denied about my story 26 years ago, but I believe with one speech and one tweet from him, American will listen to him. He will help free my people. Mm-hmm. African American will listen to him.
And he won't do it.
I know that this would be very difficult for him to talk about, because since this being Arabs and Muslims, it would embarrass. And it would even hurt his cause.
And it would expose the truth about Islam and what it teaches.
So, but I wanted to say, because my people, I'm very, very angry. My people are still being auctioned for $400 in Libya and in Algeria as we speak. We have seen that on CNN, where the premiere, the video were two Black African men, whether they are Nigerian or they're from any other part of Western Africa and Eastern Africa and Northern Africa, people who left their own birth country, trying to cross to Europe for the betterment of their own lives and their family, end up being apprehended by these people on the border and taking them to the auction to sell them with impunity of the sitting government. I know Libya is going through a lot of things, Syria going through a lot of things, but how would you allow such thing to happen to your own brother when we share the same continent, Africa? So I am saying Mr. Luis Farrakhan would be the man to help me, help free those who are still in bondage as we speak.
Absolutely. And so Francis, and Farrakhan won't, because he has an agenda. And so look, slavery is an evil. But the question is not who had slavery, because everyone had slavery back in the day. The question is who got rid of slavery. And in America, despite that that terrible past, that past of injustice, because of the Declaration of Independence, because of the Constitution, because of the Judeo-Christian tradition, America freed slaves and made blacks equal citizens. And yes, we can discuss still that painful and difficult journey, but it's a positive story in terms of progress. And we do not find this in the example of what we're discussing now. There is still slavery in, for instance, Sudan and the other places we mentioned, precisely because of the Quran, precisely because of Islamic ideology and Islamic teachings. And so here's the question. Today we see on the left in America, the left is so against racism. We see this slogan, Black Lives Matter, that as a slogan, of course it's important. Black Lives Matter, just like all lives matter. But the question is, do all black lives matter? Because I think all black lives should matter. And so the question is, when I approach leftists who are very concerned about slavery, who talk about slavery all the time, demonizing the United States, who are very concerned about racism, and they're so much against racist discrimination, and I ask them, well, what is your opinion of the racism practiced by Muslim Arabs till this day when they enslave the Abid in Africa? What is your opinion on that? And they don't want to talk about it. So it appears that not all black lives matter to many people on the left that talk about Black Lives Mattering, right?
This is one of the, I'm actually watching all the things that are happening in the United States. I'm a naturalized US citizen. I care very much about this beautiful country that have given me a second chance in life to relive my dreams again, and many other immigrants. It is a beautiful country that I cherish, and I live to do whatever it takes to be a part and be a great citizen of it. Black Lives Matter is rightfully a good thing to be said. And I always say, if it is, how many blacks that are still in bondage as we speak? This brings me to many these official human rights groups who are Western group, who abandoned me when I was in captivity for actually 10 years, when my people suffered in the hand of Arab Muslims in the north, declaring a war against us, a holy war against the Christians and enemies in the south, including in Western Sudan, which is predominantly Christians. Something that shows it was absolutely racism and none other than because it wasn't a religion alone. So the human rights organization in the West have abandoned us. And I believe if my slave master was a white man, I would have not been left or a man in bondage. It is that simple. Right. So yeah. I no longer believe in those big official human rights groups. That's why I have referred earlier that Mr. Luis Farrakhan would be the best person with one speech and one tweet to help me free those who are still held in bondage. So I wanted to say that if we want to solve a problem, we should solve from the root cause, and we should solve it further, not only within the small circle. I don't deny what might be exist still in the United States, because slavery is a different form.
Yeah.
And that is, I speak critically about human trafficking from the people who could be a businessman, a businesswoman, and others, or corporates that trick the very vulnerable people, whether in South America or somewhere in Europe or somewhere in Africa, to come to work here for no pay under threat about it. Those could be. I stand solely with my brothers in this country that still wanted to get the full justice and full freedom. I did not embrace what happened in Minnesota with Mr. George Floyd. May his soul rest in peace. And I think that have awakened many people. But there has been many, many things, bad things happenings. Hundreds of people are dying, and I can give you this story. 6 years ago, Boko Haram, has been kidnapping hundreds of Christians, schoolgirls for sex slavery. And sometimes asking ransom for those who have converted to Islam. And those who do not remain as slaves. These are things that are happening today in our watch. We hear about it and then file closed, nothing else. Nobody talk about it, nobody go and ask, where does the story end? So I want us to be more outlooking to all issues.
Right.
And that is to say, I'm not against the movement here, but let us also, those who cares about Black Lives Matter, also should cares about my people that remain, hundreds of thousands of South Sudanese and others who are still slaves, and those who are crossing the border for the betterment of their life to Europe and ending up being auctioned, taken to Middle East, work as slave, or even killed.
Thank you so much, Francis. And look, absolutely. And we know that the left is, has taken control of the culture in the West, controls the media, controls the national dialogue and discourse. And so when they say when they say Black Lives Matter, they obviously don't mean all Black Lives Matter. Because if all Black Lives matter, then Bernard Tramel's life would matter, David Dorn's life would matter, and the lives of the Sudanese African blacks would matter. And so when that doesn't suit the Marxist agenda, they look the other way. So that's what's going on here. So Francis, let's move on here. Now, this could, still on the same theme, I just want to ask this question. The slave master, Giama, I think was his name, his wife very much hated you, treated you terribly. And so we know that he made you sleep with the animals. He told you that you are an animal. That's what he said because of the racism against the Dinkas and the black people. But his wife had an especial hatred for you. Why did she hate you so much? And why was she always telling him to kill you?
This is very interesting questions. As you were just asking a question about this woman, I have been positive in my book and the series of telling my story, but I never like to talk about this woman. For one simple fact, this woman, for the good 10 years that I've lived with them, doing everything I can, not only she had ever had even a minute to have an eye contact with me, telling me anything, she would throw a word or something and walked away. And she always wanted me not even to look to her when she's walking, whether I have to look down or look opposite of her. She would do regularly the same thing, come spitting on me. She always said, if it is me, up to me, she can just kill me like a chicken. She always tell her husband, what are you waiting for? Kill him. She even one time invited her brother, who is the head of the militia in the area. They call him a warrior. His brother's name Musa. So his brother could get rid of me. So I don't know. The question why she hated me, I don't know. But I believe this is one of the evil human beings that believe that I didn't deserve to be who am I, how I look, the language I speak, and even be alive. And I think that's some of the answer.
And of course, interlinked with the Arab racist hatred of blacks. And of course, neither here nor there, but sounds like an extremely miserable woman, suffering herself under Islam without perhaps knowing it, and persecuting other people, and of course the infidels. Francis, how did you escape? You tried to escape twice, and you got caught. They got you back, but the master, quote unquote master, I even kind of don't like saying that, but he didn't kill you. But then in your third attempt, our time is running out, but can you tell us briefly how you got out?
Well, how I get out, just 7 years after my arrival into the village or the farm with Jim Abdullah's family. I worked for 7 good years, hoping that one day these people would treat me any better or even assimilate me to the family as a human being, just like them. But on my first attempt, it was not successful. I was brought back. I was the first one and the last one to wake up in the morning. I ran away about 4 a.m., time that I leave usually with the cattle. But I was captured back by his brother and I was beaten, nearly beaten me to death, and actually ordered me never to escape again. And I escaped again the second time, and my master himself saw me. And when he actually captured me back, he asked me to lie down on my chest and give him my hands and my leg behind him. And then he pulled out the big rope and he tied me and dragged me home. And that's the day he also went in and got his rifle and said, "Today going to be your last day on earth." I remember while I was tied down, I was watching my own blood running, and his wife Howard was just shooting him up, shoot him, kill him. But Jimmy left me tied up until a few hours later, he released me with a condition: if I attempt again, he will kill me next time. And I waited until when I turned age of 17 in 1996. That's the time I escaped, because I knew that I was a 17-year-old young man, not a boy anymore, and I could defend myself. And I was lucky to make my way to another town called Abu Matari, where I was helped by another, I would call him in the northern Sudanese Arabs, his name Abdurrahman, a Muslim man. But this is one of the great story of this young Muslim man who helped me. And I think through him, I was able to make my way to the capital of Sudan, Khartoum.
Right, and Francis, our audience will have to read the book, Escape from Slavery, to get all the details. But you ended up in the United States, and then you worked with this very wonderful man that's on our program sometimes, Charles Jacobs, who runs his organization, Americans for Peace and Tolerance. But there's a segment too where they're doing a lot of things, but especially the anti-slavery work. And you worked with Charles Jacobs, and you also were able to help with the liberation of slaves in Africa, right?
Yes, after coming to America as a young refugee to Fargo, North Dakota, which is my first place, and then complained about the weather 2 months after my arrival into the United States, and went to Ames, Iowa. Charles Jacobs discovered me, and he requested me to move to Boston to join his abolitionist group, and I happily accepted, although at that time I have to have a translator that have to speak to me in Arabic and then translate back whatever that I say and should be saying. And from that time, I started working with Charles because I was actually struck by two movies that Charles asked me to watch. And the first day I arrived his offices in downtown Boston. And one of the first movie was I Have a Dream speech. I Have a Dream speech from Dr. Martin Luther King, whom I had the privilege to meet his wife, Scott King, alongside Boston Mayor Thomas Menino and Charles Jacob when they awarded us Boston Freedom Award. And then the other movie was one of the important movies for me. And that gave me a lot of energy to fight until my people become free today. It is a movie, The Ten Commandments, when Jews were enslaved in Egypt. And when the Moses spoke to the Pharaoh, when he said, "Let my people go," and the Jews were actually allowed to cross the river. But when the enemy tried to follow them, they sunk in that water. Something that I used to tell my Jewish friends when I speak at the Jewish synagogue and temples. I tell them I wish my people one day would cross the river. Indeed, through Dr. Charles Jacobs, a man whom we are indebted to, and I will say the freedom that my people have today in Southern Sudan as an independent country through the American Anti-Slavery Group, through the people of Charles Jacobs, who dedicated since 1992 after reading an article that you could buy and sell slave in Sudan for the price that less than CBR at that time. Charles took me to the Congress, to the US Senate, to the State Department, to the White House, and I was able to meet the President of the United States, where I held his hand. And I said, President Bush, you mean what you say? Please help my people. He promised me until the peace was signed. And I had such an honor to always say the independence of South Sudan is an American legacy, is the legacy of the people of the United States from all walks of life. It is the legacy of the President George W. Bush at the time and his government. And Charles was the lead force that, and the CSI, Christian Solidarity International.
Thank you so much, Francis. So look, this effort continues till this day because the suffering and injustice continues till this day in Sudan and in 4 other countries in Africa. And we know that Charles Jacobs is on the front lines fighting this, as you are as well, Francis, trying to liberate enslaved people. And so everyone in our audience, please help Charles Jacobs. His organization is Americans for Peace and Tolerance. Look it up, contact Charles there, and get involved. 2 quick things before we go, Francis, but we're going to have to bring you back. Francis, one thing that really was overwhelming to me, in your book you talk about how you tried to pray, and you did pray, of course, throughout the years, but you say how you only had a 7-year-old's understanding of God, because that's the age that you were kidnapped and enslaved. Could we just finish on your relationship with God, how your Christianity and faith evolved, and where you stand now in terms of all the suffering you endured and the freedom, thank God, that you gained?
Indeed, thank God. I always looked up to God, and I always say thank you for saving me during my, time in slavery, and also thank you for guiding me and for delivering me. My parents both are Christians, Roman Catholic, and I remember when I was very young, 3-4 years old, my mother used to come, and that's when I was baptized and given the name Francis, which is a Christian name, and my African name, Pule. My mother used to tell me always, Pule, Francis, do you know why we say sometime when you are sitting alone, you're not alone, God is watching over you? And she always say, please, I want to tell the truth and do the right things always, because God is watching you. And when you're in trouble, always pray. I knew I was in trouble. I was in trouble watching people being slaughtered just next to me. I watched people crying and seeking for exits. And during the journey to the north, and all the time I spent in the farm working as a slave. But I used to lie awake at night and wonder who will come and free me. But always remember God is actually watching and protecting me, and through him one day I will escape. That is how God was close to me. Today, I still have the same relationship. Whenever anything goes, and that's why I believe one day we will free all the people who are still enslaved. I have heard many years ago that 27 million or over 27 million people are still enslaved worldwide. I know exactly how it feels like to be enslaved. During this pandemic that started early this year to this time, all of us are complaining just from not leaving our home. Imagine that's to live that kind of life, not going anywhere, being prohibited and exiting from leaving your own house to the next door. You will feel, something wrong. And this is why we're complaining. This is why we're praying hard. This is why we're asking our leaders to do whatever it takes so this pandemic fade away. And with the same thing, I know what freedom feel like. Today I speak freely, and today I walk freely. And during my time, I never had that opportunity. And today, as you and I speaking here, hundreds of thousands and millions of people are still wondering, living in the condition that I used to be, lying awake at night and wonder who will come and free them. And this is why I'm calling out Mr. Luis Farrakhan. This is why I'm calling out everyone that say Black Lives Matter, so that it should be matter to all of us, including my people who are crossing the desert to Europe.
Absolutely. And Francis, thank you so much for coming on. God bless you. And in terms of your efforts today to free those you left behind unwillingly, those that are left behind this Muslim Arab curtain of slavery, those in our audience who want to get in touch with you and help you in your efforts to liberate these suffering people, where can you be found?
Could be found definitely through American Peace and Tolerance under Dr. Charles Jacobs organizations, and also visit iabolish.org, word iabolish.org. And I'm pretty much around, and I'm spied up to speak, and I will not rest until I see all my people and everyone free at last.
Thank you so much, Francis Bach, for coming on the show, and absolutely for all the people that are left behind this Muslim, Arab, Islamic curtain of slavery. Let's do everything we can. So everybody in our audience that wants to help, please get involved and contact iabolish.org and get involved. And Francis Bach, what an honor and a privilege to have you on the Glazov Gang. God bless you. Thank you for sharing your story with us. You're an amazing person. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I look forward to coming back in.
Thank you so much, Francis. Everybody that watched the show tonight, one more time, iabolish.org. Get involved, because all lives matter and all Black lives matter. We'll see you soon on the Glazov Gang. Good night.